Hello and welcome to my channel. The sound on the last few videos was a little bit janky, so I decided to switch things up. Ow. But you having trouble? Oh no, lost our spot in the book. Decided to add some better sound. Ouch. Before I get started on the book, I just wanted to go over a few things, clarify some things. So the purpose of this channel is to talk about fundamentalism and about harmful aspects of different faiths and religion. Most people who are of faith don't refer to it as religion. That's more of a secular thing. So anyway, but I got some comments on my last video regarding homeschooling. I will never demonize homeschooling across the board. I will criticize parents who use it to neglect their children, overly shelter their children, as in like keeping them away from the rest of the world, and doing things like hiding abuse or educational neglect, for example. I have never said that homeschooling in and of itself is bad, because obviously that changed in 2020 when everyone was doing it. So if you are coming across this channel from my former church and you decide to make threats against my family, I will not tolerate it. There was some harassment that went on about 15 years ago after I publicly criticized my church, and some people in the church went after my parents and began harassing them and everything, and that's just not gonna fly. I'll probably add more at a later date. Apparently this channel is being recommended to people from back home, I guess some people in the church and everything. So yeah, I'm speaking the truth, not my truth, the truth about what went on. If certain people from my old church have an issue with these videos, maybe you shouldn't have covered up the abuse of children or congregation members. So just remember that, because that's not what Jesus would do. Okay, we're going to get started in the book. I just came across a podcast that Jill started doing, or that Jill and Derek did with, let me look it up. I was listening to it last night and in the bathroom at work, on my lunch break, of course. The podcast is called Reality Life with Kate Casey. It's episode 809, Jill Duggar and I assume Derek. Like, I wish Jill could just give interviews on her own without Derek being there, but okay, so I'm starting on page 167 of the book. So it talks about how Jill still does not have the contract in hand because TLC and her dad's legal dude, whose name is Chad, he's like a PR guy, is still not giving it to them. Oh, and then that guy, I hope I don't forget to say this in the next video, but that guy ended up draining their bank account. So he was in charge of their ministry bank account, Jill and Derek's ministry. I think it was the ministry bank account. I'll have to double check. Oh, it was Dillard family. So they're short on money already, financially constrained, and they had some savings. And they said our Dillard family ministry bank balance had $1,500 in it, and then it was gone. And Chad had claimed that they owed him money. I wish they would have gone after him. They really didn't have the means to do so at the time. I guess you can file a police report. So the guy was on the account as like their accountant or something like that. Dude should probably be banned from doing that in the state of Arkansas and other places as well. So the ministry that they're applying to told them they're in danger of losing the job opportunity in Panama if they didn't get that proof of contract, because the ministry, they required the contract because they wanted to make sure that Jill and Derek were free of any legal obligations. So they wanted the counting on contract. So they said they had no job lined up and no knowledge of whether they would ever be able to get out of the contract. And then, of course, TLC asked them if she would be willing to have cameras in when she went into labor, and she said, absolutely not, no way. Good for her. I mean, she's not getting paid anyway, and it doesn't matter. I mean, she wants her privacy. So Chad had resigned from Dillard Family Ministries. He was resigning from the board, and then they were troubled to check the bank balance. I already talked about this, but he withdrew like $1,500. When they confronted him, he gave them some story about a CPA bill being due, even though what he was paid was supposed to cover those expenses. She said, maybe another day we would have fought harder, but right then, with so much on our plate and with the future so full of unknowns, neither of us had the appetite for another battle. I don't blame them. I mean, sometimes you just put it away, put it on the shelf for another date. And Jill says, I was just 26 years old, and she just said she felt so burned out. So the next chapter is chapter 7. It's titled Dying Inside and Out. It's about her birthing struggles. And she goes, all my life, I'd been taught that suffering was good. So that's key. Mormon fundamentalists, and I think Mormons as well, are also taught that. And so it can kind of get into dangerous territory, obviously, with that notion that pain is good, because that can lead to all sorts of abuse. There were some complications with the labor. They said that the baby's heart rate had lowered, and she couldn't push anymore. She was in labor for quite some time, 36 hours. So she was in a lot of pain, and they said, we're going to have to do a C-section. And they tried to give her, I think, an epidural, but she couldn't push anymore and everything. They said, we're doing a C-section now, prep for surgery, and they're yelling and running around. And then they threw the bed that was against the wall into a gurney, which is really bad. She says, then came the pain and the screaming. I realized after a minute that it was my own. I felt as if someone had just sliced me open on my side. I looked down, half expecting to see blood. There was none. And then it hit me. I'd had an epidural. If the pain was strong enough to break through the drugs that strong, something was seriously wrong. My screams only got louder. It was like a pain in my side, a ripping and tearing unlike anything I could ever imagine. She said I could still hear my screams as the doctor started giving me shots of local anesthetic, began slicing me open to get the baby out as soon as possible. I heard someone shouting about the amount of blood I was losing and another person yelling as they counted every instrument and item the doctor put inside of me. But another thought within me was even louder. This is it, Jill. This is where you and the baby died. This is the end. There's no more need to tough it out. It's extremely sad and terrifying. I think people had suspected that something had gone wrong with the birth. People online had suspected that it was a traumatic birth, but she never went into detail about it until now, which she doesn't have to. All right, we are 2/3 of the way done. Can't wait to get to some of my own stories about church and just some videos, as well as some reaction videos too. I'm just going to watch, of course, I want to watch 19 Kids and Counting, do some reactions to some of their old videos, and then just various related videos. So we left off with Jill pretty much almost died. Very scary. The writing here is really good. So most people, unless they're a professional writer, they use a ghostwriter. The writing in this book, throughout the book, it really, like, the emotion really came through. It was kind of draining to read because there's a lot of emotions. Like, you really feel her fear, her anxiety, all these things, and, like, at some points, hopelessness, which is, natural emotion to feel. She wakes up after the C-section because she passed out. She opened her eyes to see Derek. He was wearing the same shirt that he'd been wearing for the past few days. He looked 10 years older, or 5 years older. She said the pain wasn't just on my side, but all down my lower torso. So he says, you've been out for 4 hours, but it's okay. You're okay. He said, you've had a uterine rupture, which is really bad. And there was a hole in it. It was as big as my fist. You lost a lot of blood too, about half your total blood volume. Oof. That's also bad. They gave you a blood transfusion and they were able to keep your uterus. They saved your life. And the baby's okay. They had to take him to a different hospital. He's in the NICU. Like, very terrifying stuff. So I remember at the time there was speculation online because they never talked about it, which they don't have to. But there were speculations. I can't remember where the speculation came from, but they seemed to have some medical bills from his birth, and then she had some medical issues too. But yeah, they just didn't really talk about it. So she says that her mom came with her and was with her all the time, and she made sure that Derek and Jill were taken care of, which is good. She says her youngest son, her baby, was unresponsive at birth. He'd been oxygen deprived for a little while during the rupture and swallowed some meconium. I think that's poop. Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's the newborn's first poop. It's like tar colored, because I remember when my oldest nephew was born, it was just it's like this little black poop. It was very interesting looking. Okay, but anyway, that's not funny that he swallowed it. When he was in the NICU, they were concerned about him, so they sent him in for a scan, and it showed signs of bleeding on the brain. Also very bad. She said when she got to hold him in the NICU, she realized how close both she and her son had come to death. Yeah, maternal mortality and infant mortality is surprisingly high in this country compared to other first world nations. And the doctor said there's nothing we can do about it right now. We can follow up with another scan in a few months to see how he's healing. It's only then that we'll be able to begin to understand whether there's any damage to the brain. Yeah, I had I guess a distant cousin they were twins when the mom gave birth. They got the first twin out, and then the other one got I think he got stuck or something. Anyway, it was a vaginal delivery, of course. He was deprived of oxygen, and he has some pretty moderate developmental problems. He's never going to be able to live on his own. And then some people do have what they think is brain damage, and it ends up being, the kid ends up being normal and stuff. So I used to watch Teen Mom, which is... It's kind of a trashy show, but when it was the first season or something like that, they had this, one of the moms had twins, fraternal twins, and she was living in West Virginia, and she began noticing that one of the baby's legs were bent, they were bowed. So she kept taking her in for scans. Long story short, they didn't end up diagnosing her until she was 3 or 4 years old. And she ended up she unfortunately has a disorder that is extremely rare. There's only a few people in the world with it. And the doctors at first told her she's not going to make it past her 20s, and so they believed that for the longest time. And then they were later told they'd later have discovered other people who've lived into their 70s with it. So, but at the time when the child was just a little baby and they're trying to figure this out, there were some doctors who told her she probably has brain damage or she has some developmental issues or something, where she's just not going to be mentally cognitive. Turns out she was completely fine mentally. It was her muscles. Oh, she has muscular dystrophy. That was. It was a really rare form of it, though. I think they were saying there's people who have similar types of muscular dystrophy as this girl, but no one in the world has the exact type of it. Anyway, but that's always extremely scary to be told that your child has brain damage. At one point, this just makes me angry to even read this, but at one point Derek stepped out from the NICU to see Jim Bob there talking with some staff. Derek was confused, as with hospital protocol only allowing a limited number of slots on our unsupervised visitor list, we'd not given Pops permission to visit. Thanks to the show, however, everyone knew who Pops was. When he'd come for a visit, he'd invited himself inside without any hesitation from the staff. That's nice. That happens a lot, though, with celebrities. So I work in D.C., and let me tell you, there are two worlds. There's one for us, and then there's one for people who are in power or famous or anything. So a lot of politicians do this, and politicians' staff, too, which are even worse. But they do this. And they just are the rules don't apply to them. And a lot of celebrities are that way too, unfortunately. Jim Bob goes, a lot of people are asking about him, their youngest son, Samuel, who was just born. And then he held out his phone so Derek could glance at it. There was a text message that had just come in from Chad, who had stolen $1,500 from them. He was still working with Jim Bob. And it says, ! Get me a picture of that baby. That sleazebag. That guy needs to be charged, tarred and feathered. Derek was fuming. He took out his own phone and messaged Chad after. Please do not ask other people for pictures of my children. It makes me uncomfortable. Thank you. Chad responded 5 minutes later. I haven't asked anyone for pictures of your children. I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay. Total gaslighter. That's how our head pastor was at our church. We'll definitely be making a video about him. Okay. And then she goes, as far as her healing and recovery go, people were kind and supportive and made sure that she didn't do anything that put too much strain on her. She was especially grateful that her mom had taken her for the traditional pre-birth manicure and pedicure that she tries to do for all of her daughters before they have a baby. I mean, that's nice. That's something. And Michelle definitely comes off in the book as just a lot kinder than Jim Bob, which I think she is. I mean, Jim Bob is just a whole other level, but Michelle is still problematic. That being said, it's still Jill's mother. She noticed that Derek was feeling pretty drained. He'd just been through a long period shuttling between home and various hospitals, and then looking after Israel, which was their older son, who was a toddler at the time, and then worrying about Jill and Samuel. the baby, all while still feeling stunned and shocked by the birth itself. He needed a break. So he went to her brother's bachelor party, her brother Joseph. And she talks about how marrying into the Duggar family had cost him more than I think either of us could have imagined, but not all of the family was bad. That's very true. Derek was loved by so many brothers and sisters of Jill's. And then she talks about how she also went to the bachelor party because these are, pretty tame bachelor and bachelorette parties. Let me just tell a story. So one of my coworkers / friends, I'm still friends with her to this day. She and her husband, I actually met them at the bank where I worked, but they went to Seattle Pacific University, which is the private university that my brother went to. And they're still friends with my brother and sister-in-law to this day. But I remember when the wife got married, she also came from maybe not as a sheltered background, but she definitely came from a Christian background. But she had a lot of friends who were sheltered, homeschooled and this and that. Not that all homeschoolers are sheltered. Before somebody leaves an angry comment, I swear, people, if you criticize any form of of homeschooling, people are like, oh, we gotta circle the wagons and attack. Anyway, so she invited a bunch of friends who were very traditional to her bachelorette party, and it was a pretty tame bachelorette party from what she told me. But she did have somebody who came in and was offering, this was 2007, so the lady was offering period cups, which were not a thing at the time. They've come into trend now, and they were like, oh, what is this? And then she was offering them gel. I guess my friend thought that she was going to be a little bit more tame than it actually was, but she was offering people gel, these sample gel packets of lube that makes you tingle, and she's like, oh, go into the bathroom, put some on, just rub it in. And she said her friends were coming up to her and being like, what is this? I am so offended. This is very just lewd and everything. And she was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize this was gonna happen. Anyway, I just had to put that tidbit in about the bachelorette party. Oh my gosh. Okay, I should probably stop there because there's a very sad part in the chapter that I'll have to wait until next week. I just needed to end it on a higher note. Anyway, the kid is fine. He's I think he's 6. But he's perfectly fine. He looks definitely like a Duggar, he's got the head and the look, and he looks like a few of her siblings' children look very similar to, they look like they can be siblings, but him and his oldest brother look completely different. The older son looks like a little clone of Jill's husband, Derek. So anyway, I'm going to stop off on there. So everything ends well for the baby. That is good to know. Yeah, I'll have some more interesting stories about, and maybe some funny stories about the stuff that went on. I'm doing some shorts on my channel about just funny things that have happened in the church, and some not so funny things, but putting a twist on it. A little dark humor. If you do want to watch some sheltered children, homeschooled children comedy, check out the Sheltered Kid channel. I'll put it down below. The guy's name is Jake. He's a comedian. He was on Trey Kennedy's channel for a while doing filming. But he has some really, really great. There's one about a wedding and a wedding night and stuff, and it's pretty funny. If you're interested in that, if you grew up sheltered like I mostly did, even though I went to public school, you'll probably find it funny. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see everyone next week.